Hello next generation, welcome back to this channel. Today's video is going to be based on last week's one. This week's video is going to be tips on sticking to those physical boundaries in dating and how to have those conversations with the person that you're dating. So let's get right into it. So one of my first tips is to really ask yourself the question, what type of love do I want? What type of love is going to really truly fulfill me? And if you look into your heart, you'll start to see that the love that we want is one that mirrors God's love, and a type of love that is it's faithful, it's fruitful, it's free, and it's total. And I know that's a whole bunch of words and I'll get into that later. But start by asking that question, what type of love do I want? And then once you go from there, then you can start to talk to the person that you're dating and being, hey, like, this is not fulfilling me in the long run. A tip that I have in that conversation is reflect on past experiences where you've shown signs of physical affection and think, hey, did I feel satisfied after that? Did I feel fulfilled? Did I feel like God's love was in that moment? Not just feelings, but feelings are a good indicator. So looking at that situation, reflecting on it and being like, how did that draw the other person closer to God, and how did that draw me closer to God, and did I feel his presence in that moment? Did we invite him into that moment? Those are some good questions to ask, and reflecting on past situations can help you with setting boundaries for the future, which is my first tip. My second one is to say the no when it is easier. You can get yourself into situations, not necessarily on purpose, but you have to start thinking about, like I said, reflecting on those past experiences and being like, are there any patterns? Is there like a similar location that you guys are going to where you lead the other person away from Christ, or where you lead the other person into temptation, or even yourself, you know? When you're reflecting on those past experiences from that last tip, think about, are there any patterns? Are there any similarities in that? One of them could be location, right? So maybe it's you are in the car, or maybe it's the parents are away and it's just you guys in the house. Things like that. Is there a pattern? And try to avoid continuing that pattern. So for example, with that car and the house thing, maybe make a rule that you're never in the house alone, or make a rule that you're only in the car to get to a certain place, you know, when you're driving. Things like that, and start to look at those patterns, and if there's anything that you can avoid because you've seen from past that it's not the best. Another great tip that has helped me a lot is understanding that you've never totally given yourself to someone until you're married. You don't have any promises that are like set in stone, and so in dating you can't really totally give yourself to that person. Neither can the other person totally give themselves to you, and that is because you haven't made those wedding vows yet. You haven't made those promises in front of God and with other people around and with the church and this great sacrament that marriage is. So in knowing that, you can't know whether this person is going to be your future spouse until you are at the altar with them. You will you don't know. So even if you're like 99% certain that you're going to marry this person, you got to have in your mind, what if I don't marry this person, you know? It's good to know that nothing is set in stone until you are at the altar. So you can't pretend, you can't be acting like you're married if you're obviously not. So, and also thinking about, what would it be like for that future spouse? What if you do marry someone else? How are they going to feel when you possibly tell them about what you did with your last boyfriend, you know? Like, just think about how that conversation might go if you do end up marrying someone else. Or how would you feel if your current boyfriend had a past girlfriend and is doing the same things that he did with his past girlfriend with you? You know, things like that are great questions to ask yourself, and it kind of helps you realign where you are and not pretend like you're married when you're obviously dating. My next tip is to know the other person's triggers and to have that conversation and reflect on those past experiences and be like, it's similar to that pattern tip that I had, but think, were there certain, you know, physical signs of affection that were tempting for the other person or for yourself? Sometimes it might be something that sounds super silly, that sounds like that should be fine, but when you talk to that other person, be open to hearing the craziest thing, because if you truly love that person, you'll be willing to give up whatever that sign of physical affection was in order to love in a true way, in a freeing way. So I think that's super important. And some examples, I guess, of signs of physical affection that might be triggering for different people. I know, especially for me, it can be different for a woman than it can be for a man. Sometimes it's just the way that men are made biologically, that they will have more triggers than women at times, or maybe for women might be at a certain time. So I guess having great understanding of that and of the other person will help you guys to love each other. Or maybe there's like a signal that you guys have, like, hey, if you take a step back, it probably means that that person isn't feeling comfortable, or they're trying to tell you something, because I guess ultimately we do want to show the other person that we love them in that sign of affection, but we also want to love them in a way that shows that you want to keep them pure for the future, whatever that future might be, whether it's with you or whether it's with someone else that they might be married to, or another vocation altogether. So having that in mind is just super important, and it's a really, really great conversation to have. And so those are basically the key tips that I have for you guys, and I think the bottom line is to talk with the person that you're dating about these tips and maybe bring them up in those times of temptation, or even it's great to have that conversation once a week. I would recommend just be like, hey, how have I been loving you? Can I love you better, especially when it comes to our physical boundaries, and do we need to change some? Do we need to realign? Do we need to start praying together more? How do we take these boundaries to prayer and reflect on our past experiences, go to confession, you know, have that great conversation, and I think it'll do wonders for you guys. Thank you so much for watching that video. I hope you really enjoyed it and that you learned something from it. Please consider liking and subscribing. It would mean a lot to me in supporting me in this, and it would also help if you could share it to some groups or some people that you know that could do with this. I really hope that God is working through this ministry, and I ask that you please pray for me in this, that I can continue helping you guys and talking about these important conversations that are sometimes not talked about enough. And again, thank you so much. God bless. Have an amazing weekend.